Hello and welcome to the Wolves Report. I'm Ryan Lester and thank you for joining us for episode 41, where tonight we'll be talking about that West Ham game, talking about Bruno's departure, his possible successors, taking your questions and looking ahead to Chelsea. Of course, I'm joined by my two midfield generals in the form of Nocky and Tyler, and also delighted to welcome back on the show BBC WM's Daz Hale. Good evening, gentlemen. Lots to talk about, lots to debate, lots of questions, still more questions and answers. Let's get things going straight away. Daz, your initial thoughts on West Ham United 2, Wolverhampton Wanderers 0.
4:30. Team sheet came out. I thought, that ain't a team sheet, that's a suicide note. And so it proved. The final nail in the coffin. It was extraordinary. And I think everybody who heard it at that point, I was saying on air at that moment, it's surreal. He's either an idiot or he's a genius. Time will tell. And by 7:30, we knew, didn't we?
For me, I mean, there was rumours earlier on in the day. I think we all saw bits on Twitter. People had seen this, so that people had mentioned that. I didn't quite want to believe Neves will be centre back or sweeper. Knocker, you made the journey down there. The away was quite tasty, wasn't it? But before we talk about the explicits, tell me your thoughts on the game.
I'll try and find a few positives for you.
You haven't got to do that.
I thought the first sort of 10 minutes we actually looked all right. I thought we controlled the ball relatively well. Had a couple of half chances with Podence, and I think Johnny hit one as well. I thought we were managing the game pretty well without being any real threat. And then we gave a horrendous goal away. I mean, it's not really been picked up, but we allow the goal scorer to turn 30 yards out, play a ball out wide. We don't track any runs. We're so static and rigid in our positioning that we just allow them to walk through us, really. And Kilman actually does get a decent foot in, but the lad slapped it in the top corner via Johnny's head. And then after that, I felt that you could visibly see the heads drop. It was almost like putting a pin in a balloon. It just completely deflated us. And I don't think we ever recovered from that. And it was always going to be a case of when West Ham got the second, there was no part of me thought we were going to get back into the game. We don't anyway, do we? If we can see the first goal, you know the game's over, really. But they got they got a poor second for me as well. I might be being a little bit harsh, but I think Jose Sar's got to be further across defending his near post on that one. But it was all round just really disappointing. The only positives I can really take from it is I thought Costa looked really good when he came on. We've been questions about his fitness, but he looks to me like he's good to go now for 90 minutes. And I thought Chem Campbell did okay when he came on as well. But other than that, I thought we were absolutely dismal. And I was more disappointed than anything else, because I think if you're going to lose a game of football, go down swinging, have a bit of a go of it. And I didn't get that impression. I don't want to say lack of effort, but there was definitely a lack of belief. And it was just a really disheartening afternoon.
Tyler, did we look like a team that from the off didn't really believe? We knocked it round a little bit. There's a couple of shots from outside the box. Nori probably summed up the way Wolves are feeling and playing. Probably should have took his chance. Instead he tried to square it, didn't take responsibility. So was it really of a team that didn't believe in what they were being told?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair. And I think I might be wrong, but I counted potentially 4 players playing out of position. If you count Neves, Semedo, wherever he was playing. Podence and Guedes aren't your front two, are they? So you've got, 30 of your sides probably not playing in their natural position, and are they then doubting what their job is?
Well, that's probably 4 or 5 if you include Johnny. Whether he was sometimes he was centre back, sometimes he was right back. I still don't actually know whether it was 5-3-2. Whether I don't really know, because sometimes Semedo looked like he was in midfield, and if that was the case, and you've got the new Traore on the bench, none of it made any sense to me, Tyler.
Well, you'd had a few Port and Guinnesses by that point, and so to be fair, we could have been playing 10 at the back, and I don't think you'd have known, to be honest.
There's a lot of people talked about that. I think I'm getting a hard time for enjoying myself.
As it started, I thought Semedo was sort of right of a midfield 3, and then I thought as the half went on, it looked like a 4-4-2. But like Daz said, if that's the team selection and we're watching the game and we don't know, there's a good chance the players don't really know what their job is and what they're meant to be doing. And I totally agree with Daz. I think as soon as we saw that, that's a guy signing his own death warrant, isn't it? And he looked a beaten man. I thought the players looked beaten. The first goal went in, and like Knocker said, it was just over, wasn't it? Kilman's face when the ball went in, he just sort of went, "Oh well, this has been coming."
It's like a watershed time again playing West Ham, because when you think back to up until January, February, the football we were playing. I mean, I know we hark back to the first 3 games of the season. We lost them all, but everyone was going, it was really fun football. We'd had 50 or 60 shots and it looked good. And at the start, after the year, I haven't got the stats in front of me, but I think we were like second in the form league, and we'd won more games than pretty much anyone else apart from Manchester City. And even that game at Villa, when the 3-2 game, when any other team who'd been 2-0 down away from home with 10 minutes to go and played like a drain had got back to 2-2 in stoppage time, you'd have gone, all right then, just took it. Bruno Lage, at that point, it was right in front of us, was waving them forward, go for another. And they went on 1-3-2. And it was like, and then for some reason, when we could start to see, never mind the top 6, when we could start to almost smell the top 4, when we played Arsenal twice, when we played West Ham, for whatever reason, around about that time, the mentality changed, whether it was a pressure job, whether it was a bottle job, but we started playing differently, and they've never recovered from that. It was a notable shift in approach. And again, I don't know whether it was like some players or whether it was him, just all of a sudden, instead of must win, it became a little bit more pragmatic. And yet the games where he should have been pragmatic, like twice against Manchester City, that's when he tried to throw the kitchen sink at it. So I'm an absolute loss to what's gone on over the last 6 or 7 months, because I don't think there was any signs of it leading up to January, February time.
Going back to last season, Daz, I think those 2 games in London on the spin, I know I was at one of them with Tyler and one of them with Nocky. We went to Arsenal and we battled really hard, and I mean that was just full heartbreak, conceding that goal in injury time there. I'm not sure they ever recovered to that. And then they went to West Ham. I went down to West Ham with Nocky, and they didn't believe. The subs were bad. It was all over the place, and they've never really seemed to recover from that moment onwards. Now, just going back to the game, as you said, it's West Ham in the limelight again, but for a team that had jointly lowest scorers, the same as Wolves, I just can't believe. I know he's talked about, I want Neves deeper to control the game. I kind of get the theory, but really, you don't play your best player in the most unattacking position in the whole thing. I don't understand. Also, what does it say to Totti? What does it say to Mosquera? That if you just brave enough to put Totti in, who never let Wolves down last season, you put him in and you take your medicine, you can stick with 4-3-3. You're making one change then, one adjustment to the team. Not, as Tyler said, potentially 4 or 5 people out of position. It's unbelievable.
I could almost, and I didn't agree with it, by the way, but I could almost see a case against Manchester City, because he thought, I'm going to need one of these over the next 3 games. I don't want them to get absolutely destroyed by Haaland now. And so I just still put them on. But against Man City, I could think, okay, he doesn't want to wreck them if Haaland goes and scores 3, 4, 5 and destroys them. But last week at West Ham, it's just bizarre, and I don't think any Wolves fan anywhere would have. Well, I don't think anyone agreed with the team selection, did they? It was just like it completely lost the plot.
You are listening to the Wolves Report with Daz Hale, Ryan Lester, Mark Knock and Chris Tyler, talking about the West Ham game. We're going to talk about Bruno's departure and his future. This is a live show recording. You can watch it back. Your comments coming through. They're coming through thick and fast. When I filter through the clean ones, I'll get them in the screen. You've got some of your questions on Twitter. So thank you for your interactions there. We'll get them up and running and get them part of the show when I've got a chance to do so. Nocky, still talking about the West Ham game. Can you put any logic to anything what he did, or did he generally see a picture that no one else in football could see?
No, I can't make any sense of it. I mean, it goes back to the Coady and Bolly sales, doesn't it? I mean, I agreed that it was the right thing to do, was to move them on. I think that we needed to move to a new formation. But if you don't trust your remaining centre halves in terms of Mosquera and Totti, you don't let Coady and Bolly go, do you? Because you're putting yourself in this position. So if there was any danger that he'd have to go back to 3 at the back and he doesn't fancy any of these players to play there, then why on earth have you let your three, if you count Sice as well, you let your three most experienced, and then Donker, you've let them all go. And I don't understand why he's abandoned ship 8 games in. I mean, he said this is a formation he wanted to play. He wanted to play 4 at the back. So if you're going to go down, maybe fall on your sword a little bit. Don't revert back to what didn't work last season. And we repeatedly keep doing it, and it still doesn't work. So I don't know why he suddenly thought there'd be a shift and he'd be effective against West Ham. I mean, let's not forget, this is a West Ham team. They hadn't won at home for 6 games. They were below us in the league, and I was still going into it expecting to get beat. I think I said 2-0 on the podcast last week because I thought we'd lose the game.
No one likes to show off, Knocker.
Believe me, I'm not happy to be right. But, you're up against a side who is struggling. They can't score goals. Defensively, they're all over the place. They've got no bite in midfield. And we just move our best player out of the area where he can influence a game. We put the 3 players up front who can't affect a game at the moment. It simply isn't working. And we just repeated the things that hasn't worked for really probably a year now. So it was bizarre, and I think he had to go after that. I don't think there was any way you could have kept him in the team, kept him managing this team after what's gone on. And 1 win in 15, Chelsea to come, that would have been 1 win in 16. You can't survive it. No manager in football survives that.
I mean, I'm going to move on to Bruno shortly after we finished up on the West Ham game, because there are a couple of positives at the end of the game I want to talk about. But just dipping into that pool quickly, I don't think I've seen a fan base turn so unanimously at the end of a game. I mean, I think people had turned at the start. On social media, I don't think I saw a single person anywhere saying, oh, the lot had gone. Everyone had gone. The away end were chanting, you don't know what you're doing. There was all kinds of things coming all over Twitter. The space on Saturday night was fantastic. But everyone was in harmony. And I think that reaction the club must have seen that. They're obviously in doubts, but when your whole fan base is unanimous, the club have to act. So praise to the club for acting quickly. They've just got to get it right. But we'll move on to that in a bit.
Can I just jump in on that, right?
Go on.
In the stand, it wasn't actually that bad. They backed him right up to the point where he made the 3 substitutions. I think he took Nunes off. That was the first kind of murmurings of discontent, and then they stayed with them up until the final whistle. So I think the fans were actually have been pretty patient, in all honesty. I mean, if you lose the home fans, you're going to do that quite easily. Home fans are, I don't want to say fickle, but it's easy to lose your home fans, whereas the away support, which is your real hardcore, when you lose them, it's over. You have to make that decision then.
Well, what I would say is I don't think any of those players gave up. I don't think they stopped trying. I don't think they believed, but I didn't see anyone stropping or sulking or walking around. I thought everyone tried. I just thought they'd lost their ideas, they'd lost their confidence, that they were completely rudderless. Now, playing your best player out of position, who is our new leader, what influence can he have there? Yes, he can hit crossfield passes for fun, but he's not going to hit them balls when he can put people in where he doesn't affect a game. He can't hit 70, 80-yard passes. So for me, a ridiculous decision. But let's move on to a couple of positives. We've talked about this for a little while. Adama Traore, I thought he had a real positive impact on the game. I thought I love his pace. I love how direct he is. Just someone that's prepared to have a go, take the game to the opposition. None of this overplaying, keep it fullback, centre midfielder back. Direct, have a go. Gives you something to cheer about. Have a go. And he almost set up a goal. The other positive as well, Diego Costa. I mean, the guy isn't fit yet. But I mean, we were saying off air before, Daz, the impact he had on the game, the positivity around him, you can clearly see this guy has been a very good footballer, and maybe we can get a version of that.
It's presence as well, but he's still got the hunger. And straight away, we were a better team when he was on. And again, unfortunately, it took an injury to Pedro Neto for him to play Traore. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been on again to the last 10 minutes if he'd been on at all. But yeah, I mean, we all know what Diego Costa can do. We just want to see him start. And I'm guessing he's probably been working in his head on the Chelsea game, hasn't he, this weekend? But he's definitely going to add something for us, a focal point. But I think, the point was made a few moments ago as well. We can dwell on the Ruben Neves decision at the weekend, but this ain't one decision. It's, we've read the stats there. 1 win in 15. Failed to score in 22 of the last 46. We've took 8 points from the last 15 matches. lowest scorers, etc. So it isn't just one bad day at the office, which some people on national radio appear to think that it was.
Incredible today. But
yeah, well, I mean, you know,
just before we move on to just totally onto Bruno, Daz, it's, I mean, I think Nocky said, or Tyler said, well, I'm going to try and find some positives. I genuinely believe there's a simple partnership there. I think Ricochet mentioned a comment here as well, that potential partnership between Costa and Adama. That looks really promising. You've got a proper centre forward that's going to put himself about, whether he stops a centre-back winning it, whether he does a knockdown or hit it towards goal. He probably should have done better with that header, but it was a clean header. It's unlucky. It's a chance we've created, like we've not created all season.
And if we all remember 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when Adama Traore looked as if he was going to fulfil his potential, it's because he had Raul Jimenez in his pump. And the amount of, I think even Match of the Day started noticing, didn't they, the amount of goals that they were working between themselves, the amount of crosses that were coming in. And I think that's what and I think a lot of this started in February before the Brighton game when there was a bus stop, because the players wanted to get the ball wide and get the ball into the penalty area. And he was actively telling them not to do it. And he's been obsessed with playing, I think we've talked about this before, playing narrow and playing in between the lines and little gives and goes on the edge of the area. That's not what we're good at. And even the players knew that it was the wrong way to do it. And he wouldn't abandon it. And eventually, I just totally lost belief. And it's degenerated into what we've been watching for the last few months now.
Well, this is what I've said for a while. That stubbornness is probably the cost of 90% of the managers. And Bruno was no different. And we keep going into Bruno, so let's go on to Bruno, move away from West Ham now. So, as we know, Bruno Lage was relieved of his duties on Sunday afternoon, having won one game and lost 9 of the last 15 Premier League games. So this was hardly a surprise. His managerial record at Wolves, 51 games, 19 wins, 10 draws, 22 losses, 52 goals for, 56 against, -4 goal difference, and a 37.25 win percent. I believe that includes cup games as well. 10th place last season, but leaves the team in the relegation zone after only 8 games, despite the heavy reinforcements in the summer. One thing as well I want to start off with, I think this is quite telling, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I haven't seen any players on social media, good luck, boss, well done, boss, thanks for this, boss, nothing. I might be wrong. I've not seen a single word from anybody. And as we know before anyone says, and I'm sure you all know this anyway, but the club confirmed that Steve Davis and James Collins will take over as they prepare to take the team to Chelsea. Tyler, this was inevitable, wasn't it? No chances left. Had to go.
Yeah, I think so. Like you said, everyone seemed to turn after Saturday, didn't they? There was still some Bruno backers, a couple of weeks back, but I think this was the final straw for a lot of people. The stats you've all read out, like Knocker said, no manager survives that, do they? 1 minute 15. There's only one way we go. We don't score goals. We don't look like scoring goals. I got called out after the Bournemouth game for saying I think we're in a relegation scrap, and it's not even a scrap at the moment, is it? We're just heading one way. So something had to be done. Without looking too far ahead, my only concern is, and we were talking about it before, is who does replace him? Is it another Mendes? Yes man from Portugal? Let's be honest, Fosun have only got one managerial appointment correct, haven't they, in their time that they've been here? So,
good old Walter.
Who do we bring in? Do we back them to make the right decision? And are we fishing in just a small pool of Mendes clients, or can we go and look further afield? That's my only concern, to be honest.
Well, before we go down the new manager, and I've got some names and some stats and some odds and stuff we'll share. But before that, we've got to give him the small credit from where he's been. There was a couple of good days and a couple of good moments. As me and Nocky experienced, Villa away, that needs acknowledging. I mean, it was one of the worst derby performances I've ever seen, but equally one of the best moments of my football life. My ear was bleeding. I lost Nocky. The absolute lot went. And Bruno Lage was in charge, whether it was in spite of him or for his tactics. The game looked dead, but it was absolutely...
You know the answer.
Well, I think so, but it was brilliant and it needs acknowledging. There was a couple of first halves, wasn't there? Home to Everton. A good half here and there, but
what at Man United?
Yeah, Tyler. We went at Man United when Big Knot lost his glasses and we walked around Manchester looking for them.
But but that takes you back to Daz's point. At Man United, we were excellent. It was a 9, 10 out of 10 performance. We went there, and I know it was a Man United in a bit of turmoil, but we went there and totally
dominated
the game of football for 90 minutes. And then we fell off a cliff.
Yeah. And then go back to what you mentioned a few moments ago, the contrast. Bournemouth get beat 9. We go there 3 days later, and it's probably the easiest. And they have tightened up things, and credit to them, but they couldn't have wished for an easier 90 minutes than we gave them 3 days after they just.
It always feels such like a Wolves thing, Daz. Whenever that happens, it always feels like Wolves, and I'm looking forward to playing Forest, but I almost feel like we're such an ideal team to play at that time. But let's see, we could have a new manager by then. But going back to Bruno Knocker, obviously the Villa was the prime one, but for me, Bruno had a good philosophy. He flirted with us those 3 games. The football went sensational. He's desperately unlucky not to get the results. But I think he totally turned his back on his philosophy, got frightened, and just completely went into his shell. And for me, this is his undoing. If he'd let these players off their leash, I genuinely don't believe we'd be where we are now. I think we'd be higher up. So for me, he's only got himself to blame.
I completely agree. And I think that, like you say, there's been highlights. I mean, Spurs away, we were brilliant for 90 minutes in that game. Man United game, we were great for 10 minutes against the Villa. But someone put a stat on there yesterday, which I thought was a brilliant stat, that since, I think it was between April and October, Burnley have scored more Premier League goals than Wolves, and they were relegated in May. So it's not hard to see where it's falling apart.
Come on, son, this is a family show.
But he did have a good philosophy, but you can't abandon it after 3 games because you haven't got the results you wanted. And I don't think he ever got settled on a formation. I don't think he was ever completely happy with an 11. I think he stuck with players who were out of form and should have come off. And I think he was been a dead man walking for a few weeks, I think. And as well as there has been those highlights, there's been some real low points as well. So for me, I think I would have sacked him after the Bournemouth game. I think that would have been the time to get rid of him. I think we kept him longer than we should have done.
I've got a confession to make. I need to hold my hands up. And I know Tyler laughed and mocked me for it, but he was right.
I still do.
And it's fine. At the end of last season, I wanted him gone. I thought he'd be gone. But the Ass Wolves came on, and it was clear they were going to stick with him. You wouldn't have put a video out of the manager if they weren't sticking him. So I swallowed my pride. I was like, you know what? Let's give him a chance. Let's back in it, and I did. And it just shows quite most of the time you should stick with your instinct. We saw enough last season. It wasn't good enough. Even with 100 million, you'd expect more than we've seen so far spent. Some of the quality players that have been bought in, some people will say, are they quality? I think they are. I just think they've not been showcased or been allowed in the system to express themselves. So for me, that's unforgivable. Matheus Nunes is a much better player than we've seen. Gonzalo Guedes is definitely a better player than what we've seen. So, Daz...
Was that the confession, not the other thing that we thought you were going to...
I'll send you that in WhatsApp.
That's for another day, is it?
So,
I'd say those players, though, right? It is a very different league, isn't it?
Of course.
Matheus Nunes coming into the Premier League, totally different ball game for him. And, Guedes the same. I don't write players off early. I agree with you. They're 2 quality players, but Guedes looks way off it for me. Mm-hmm. And it's totally different from Spain, Portugal to come here. The one thing that doesn't make sense, and I think we'd all probably agree, is that they give him £150 million to spend, and he's not good enough after 8 games. Well, if he's not good enough after 8 games, he wasn't good enough at the end of the season, was he? Not changing that.
That raises another question. Then I would genuinely question now. I know Scott Sellers talked about, if I don't want the player, then I'm not going to let Bruno have the player, or whatever terminology he used. I don't believe that any of these players were Bruno signings. I believe they were signed via the recommendation of Mendes and his pool of players, via Jeff and Scott Sellers to a degree. I believe that Wolves are building a team for them and what they think, and not necessarily for the manager. And it was down to the manager to find what they were doing. And that quite often works in terms of head coaches now, more in European football. And I think more here now as well. Other people decide the recruitment. The manager doesn't really get to say. He can identify areas, but I don't think he gets a final say like he would make out.
Well,
he did.
Excuses though, because he was saying, like, before the window closed a year ago, and at Christmas, I need this. I need so many players. Everyone was saying it's the best transfer window the club's ever had. So we'll find out now, won't we, how good these players are when somebody else grabs hold of them. There's something that's gone deeper than that. There's just...
Well, let's go back to another point, Daz. Let's go back to another point that caused and has caused again like a real bump in the road on social media, and talk about sort of the alleged bust up that happened last season. I mean, we talked about it. People have talked about it. Other people have messaged me and talked about it. It's happened. For me, it's no coincidence that 2 days before the Brighton game, Johnny and Raul were both starting. Come the Friday morning, neither were in the team. And then various people questioned it. Various people were like, I don't believe you, whatever. Things are starting to slowly come out. But since that moment, since that game against Brighton, for me, it has just not looked the same. And leaving Raul out then, leaving Johnny out then, it made no sense whatsoever. So I genuinely believe it happened. People's confirmed to me it happened. So, and I think when something of that magnitude happens at a football team, I think it's really hard to cut. I mean, Raul's a massive influence on that squad. Johnny's a hugely respected professional. I don't know how you could fall out with those two guys because they seem very professional, honest, decent guys.
They questioned the tactics and they questioned the method, and what we talked about before. They didn't believe, and the players didn't believe in what he was doing, and they raised it. And as a result of it, they were put on the naughty step.
And now it's cost him.
That reaffirms that point even more. So if they knew back then, why then spend the money and back him? We had a podcast at the end of the season, didn't we? Me, you, Ryan, I think it was Alex, and we all said, thanks for your time, but let's part ways. It's time to go. They keep him. They spend the money. We've wasted a quarter of the season, haven't we? Pretty much. That's where we are in reality. And
so another question there.
I think Fosun, to be honest, people give them a lot of credit for where they've got Wolves, but they've also made some very bizarre decisions, like Bruno did.
Do you think then, Tyler, I mean, we're going to slowly ease into the new possible managers. Do you think the timing is more last season then? Who they wanted wasn't available, so let's stick with what we've got, because there's no point sacking him if you can't bring in somebody that fits or is available or is interested. There's no point sacking him to roll the dice at someone who is just as unproven. Isn't it better the devil you know until you can get the right man?
But that was my point a minute ago. Who's to say we're going to get the right man? They've got one appointment correct, and that was Nuno. All the others have been huge failures. So I don't necessarily back them to get the right man. There's obviously you're going to talk about the chaps we linked with, and that'll be a good conversation. So that point almost still stands now. Obviously, we were going to go in one way, but on with Knocker after the Bournemouth game, that was desperate. Even after the Man City game, get the new coach in. They've got 2 weeks to work to a point of the West Ham game. We've now lost another week, another game. We're probably going to lose the Chelsea game. Where do you draw the line? Would you say planning, isn't it?
Would you say though, Tyler? Are we giving them credit for taking note and making action now, though?
No, I'm not giving any credit for sacking a manager that's won in 15 games.
So are we all of the opinion he's probably gone further than he should?
How quickly did Brighton replace Potter?
A day
or two.
His chair wasn't even cold.
But that's a well-run football club, jokes aside, that's got sporting directors, people senior in the club that know the game inside out, that know what we're doing. You can have your opinions on Jeff and Scott, but most of us probably think they're a pair of clowns, don't we, when it comes to running a football club. So if Bruno's gone, I'd like to see the man in tomorrow, Wednesday, and start taking control of the team straight away. Otherwise, we're going to waste another week or two and we've lost another game.
I mean, I see that as unlikely, and I think it'll be, as we mentioned, Steve Davis and James Collins taking charge for the Chelsea game. And if it means we've got a new manager in, which I really think they'll want to start and have their manager and new team around, his coaching team around for the Forest game. Let's not write Forest off because it'll be horrible if that goes wrong early doors, but that's a massive opportunity for any manager to start their new tenure at a new club. So just finishing up on Bruno then, flirted with us what he could do. I believe he has a good philosophy. I just don't believe he has, I'm going to say, I don't want to be disrespectful, I just don't think he's got the bottle to follow it through. I think if he'd have followed through at the start of this season, what he started off last season, I think we'd be having a very different conversation. And what I really don't understand, and this may be overlapped Morgan Gibbs-White's departure. But in pre-season, 4-2-3-1, we're like, here we go. This is it. This is what we've been waiting for. It was entertaining. There was goals. It was fun. The players are expressing themselves. Abandoned. Absolutely abandoned. And I'm like, I have no idea why. Why would you change something in pre-season that looked so good? Can anyone say that? Surely it can't coincide with Gibbs-White going, because you just play Traore and you've got other players around that you can play as well. So for me, I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful, so losing the plot. I just think he went. People go into their shell. I think he was, again, like at the end of Nuno's tenure. It felt like he was more interested in not losing than he was winning, and that's a slippery slope for most managers. So
you look at Benfica when he did so well at Benfica, and then the minute he got sussed out, the minute things started to go wrong, he wasn't able to reverse the slide, and unfortunately the same things happened again. And some of the decisions, as we've already touched upon in recent weeks, have just been nothing. It's almost like a Tom Bowler. Just we'll play him there. I think he's just ultimately out of his depth at this level. He might come back and become a really good coach stroke manager in 3, 4, 5 years time and learn from this, but completely lost his way. And whoever comes in, hopefully immediately it will just completely change the whole atmosphere around the training ground, around the players, around the club, and give them a huge lift. And regardless of how good whoever we get is going to be in the long run, hopefully it will just change the mindset around there and just give everybody a bit of a lift, because clearly there's been some big problems there behind the scenes between the staff and the players and the coach and the manager. I
think we've taken the first 2 steps. I think the easy part is getting rid of the manager, making the decision, doing that. The hard part is recruiting a suitable replacement that's going to work with these players, and for now, just to get us away from relegation. But what I would say in terms of the fan side, and from all of us talking on WhatsApp or text, it's already given us a lift. We needed this to happen as fans. We needed the club to acknowledge this isn't good enough. It's hurting us. It needs to change. So for me, whether I'm pleased or more relieved, I don't know which one, maybe a little bit of both. But they've done these first 2 steps now. I don't believe we'll get anything at Chelsea, but I feel way more positive about it now. That, I mean, we'll talk about how we're going to set up at Chelsea later on, but it's like almost a free hit now. I feel like there's a weight off our shoulders now. Maybe it's the excitement of something new. I don't know, but I just feel like the manager's been holding us back for a while. Good luck to him, whatever he does next. I just don't think he was a good suit for Wolverhampton Wanderers, and we should have done something earlier. But there we go. Anyway, let's move on to the possible new managers. Now, I did a bit of research earlier on. I tried to get the bookies odds, but they've been fluctuating all day long. John Percy's put something out this evening about different managers. So these odds may be a little bit behind, but I'll start off with the 4 favourites as it was earlier on today. So Ruben Amorim, Sporting Lisbon, he was 5-2 earlier on. Portuguese champion, 3 times Portuguese League Cup winners, and plays a 3-4-3 system. It's rumoured buyout of something like 20 million plus for his contract. I think he's about 37, 38. Exciting young manager. I don't know if anyone watched the Spurs game about 3 or 4 weeks ago when Sporting played at home to Spurs in the Champions League. Sporting was sensational. They absolutely took Spurs apart. I'm not saying Spurs are great, but that was a team that gave a Premier League team a proper going over. Julian Lopetegui, the original desire from Fosun when they first took over, went on to manage Spain, Real Madrid, and now at Sevilla, 4-1, drifted out to 5-1, Europa League winner, and plays in a 4-3-3 system. He's struggling this year a little bit. Maybe he's at the end of his cycle there. That's a possibility. Certainly wouldn't say no to someone that's managed Spain, Real Madrid, and won a European trophy. I don't think we can turn our nose up at that. Someone that moved into the favourite was Pedro Martins, former Olympiacos, 11-8 favourite, 3 times Greek champion, Greek Cup winner, plays in a 4-2-3-1, which he's probably got our ears pricked up a little bit. Is there a bit of snobbery, though, that he's managing the Greek league and nowhere else? Entertaining football, attacking football, is that what we need? And the 4th favourite, who I don't think has got a chance, but he was 4th favourite earlier on, won a lot earlier in his career at Porto, Andre Villas-Boas, 10-1. Europa League winner, Portuguese champion, Portuguese Cup, Russian champion, Russian Cup winner, plays in a 4-2-3-1. I think that's a man that's probably gone. He's still very young in terms of his managerial career. Not done a lot recently, though. And then just a few pickings before we have a discussion about it. Sean Dyche, 10-1. The purists will love that one. Sergei Conceição, 12-1. Carlos Carvalho, 14-1. João Moutinho, 14-1. Brendan Rodgers, 20-1. Fonseca, 20s. Rafa Benitez, 20-1. Pochettino, 22-1. I think we're dreaming a bit there. Espirito Santo, he wasn't too bad last time. Maybe you don't do it twice, though. 25-1. Gunnar Solskjaer, 25-1. Should be 200 million to 1. And Jose Mourinho, 33-1. Whilst I take a breath and a drink, Daz, your thoughts on those candidates so far?
Well, there's a guy called Bo Svensson as well, Danish coach, who's also...
That's the one that John mentioned tonight, wasn't it?
Look, so what odds are you, by the way?
I've got quoted by whatever in your dreams. In your dreams means no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't do a number for you, Daz.
Listen, we have now elite players. We've got probably, we can argue the toss, but the best set of players we've probably ever had. Certainly the most expensively assembled squad we've ever had. For me, if you've got elite players, you need an elite manager, not just because of what they've got up here, but also because of the reputation. Because when you get the egos and you've got people coming in the dressing room and they think, well, who are you? What have you done? You need someone who knows how to manage elite players. And I think that's where we've struggled in the past. All those names there, I know a bit about Lopetegui. I could sit here now and waffle on and bull for the next 10 minutes about all the others. I don't know enough about them. And like, I've seen the stats like everybody else, and I could say, oh, I quite fancy him. I don't know enough about them, but they've got to get this decision right. This is pivotal for the next 5 years of this football club now. Get it right. We could easily stabilise. There's 30 games to go yet. We could have a really good season and build forward. Get it wrong, it could end up back where we started.
This is it. I mean, I know some of those names. I watch an unhealthy amount of football because I love it. And I've had to do my research today. Have I seen many of those managers in action? Well, I saw Lopetegui against Sevilla's side against Wolves. They were brilliant. They were another level with us. I think they won. That's the year they won it. He plays a 4-3-3. And then we know about Mourinho. We know about Solskjaer. We know about Espirito Santo. We know about Poch. We know about Benitez. We know about Brendan Rodgers. But the four favourites, we don't really know a lot about. Villas-Boas a little bit. But in terms of Ruben Amorim, what would it say if we got a coach that was obsessed with 3-4-3 and we went back to that now? Is that even a realistic possibility that he would do that? Do we have the players to play 3-4-3 now? Knocker.
I mean, what's his buyout? 20 million? We're not going to pay that. I don't think we'll pay that to manager. Let's be realistic. I think
you said we wasn't signing Matheus Nunes either, son.
Well, yeah, but I don't think any of us thought that was going to happen. But
no,
I think it'll be the Olympiacos. The guy was from Olympiacos, Martins. I think he'll come in. I don't see us paying 20 million buyout for him. But whoever it is, we've got to get it right. Because if we do get it wrong, we're going to end up in the Championship. There's no room for error on this one. I'm kind of with you. I don't expect to have the manager in by Chelsea. I don't think they'll want him in by Chelsea. He may be announced around that time, but I think they want to give him the Forest game, so they've got a little bit of time to work.
Not only that as well, would we want to push a new manager in for Chelsea away to start on that foot?
No.
Surely we'd want that. So I'm going to read you John Percy's latest tweet. It was about an hour ago when I was still prepping for the show. Julian Lopetegui and Bo Svensson, as Daz mentioned, emerge as two Wolves top targets after dismissal of Bruno Lage. Lopetegui currently at Sevilla, Svensson currently at Mainz. Pedro Martins not under serious contention at this stage. John Percy with pushing a story with Mike McGrath there. So interesting, because I thought, as you probably thought as well, Knocker, in terms of Pedro Martins, free agent, Portuguese, it ticks all the boxes. Yeah. So maybe, they're not settling this time. They are going, because Lopetegui, I think if we're judging him on one bad season at Seville, that's a little bit harsh. This is a guy that's managed Real Madrid, Spain, and won a European trophy. And not only that, when he played against Wolves, that team were fantastic. They were so much better than Wolves that night. Only judging it on one performance. But
I think... Sorry, mate.
Go on, pal.
I'd take your hand off for Lopetegui. I think the name itself will help us to improve the squad. I think we'll be able to we'd dip into a bigger pool of players and more realistic targets that we could get. He's experienced. He's worked with some massive personalities. So if we've got the ambition to go out and get him, then fantastic. But I think the club are well aware that it could be terminal if we get it wrong. So, fair play to them if they're going to abandon any 50-50 managers and go for someone who they think gives them a better than evens chance of turning it around.
They didn't even interview for the last appointment.
No, I think Bruno was always, because after winning the league in Portugal, although he got sacked, when you've got a league title, I think at the 5th or 6th elite league in European football, you're going to get a job somewhere else. Regardless, you're going to get a job somewhere else. Goals, free flowing. That's a big thing on your CV in European football. Got his chance, didn't take it. But I think he was the man that was always in the waiting. Lopetegui, as we know, was the first man they tried to get. But if your national team come calling or you're going to go to the championship, it's an absolute no-brainer. Don't blame him for that. He prefers 4-3-3. Wolves have got the players for 4-3-3. That's what we're trying to play now. However, I don't think it's been 4-3-3 as in terms of expressing themselves. It's been quite negative and safe, when realistically you need legs either side of Neves, Nunes, and maybe the other Traoré playing either side, box to box. And then instead of playing inverted wingers, play people on the natural side of the pitch. If Neto was playing, if he's not injured, we don't know about that. Had a few messages about Neto. I've had no injury updates on that. I don't know anything as yet. I wouldn't say no news is good news in this situation, because if you're holding your foot like that, it doesn't look good. But I digress. So, Tyler, if it was Lopetegui, as Knocker said, and bringing you as well on this and Daz, this is a massive catch for Wolverhampton Wanderers. Elite players, elite manager. Though surely that manager ticks those boxes, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I think Knocker's called it. It's a name, isn't it? And it's that lift we need, isn't it? You've all said what I'm thinking. They can't afford to get it wrong again. It's got to be right, else we'll be a championship football club again, which is a crazy thing to be saying, isn't it? With like what Daz said, the standard of footballer at the club. Shouldn't even be thinking about it, should we? But it's huge, and you can't knock his CV, his track record, or what he's done, can you? So I think that would be a bit of a bit of a pull. I was with you, Knocker. I thought the Olympiacos one was the easy one. Get him in, probably fairly steady, but it didn't seem to inspire many people. I just think they can't afford to get it wrong. The calibre of player are there. I don't like the fact we're writing Chelsea off. I'm sorry, I slightly disagree with you on that.
No, I wasn't writing them off, but what I was saying, sorry, I didn't make myself clear. What I was doing,
you are though, aren't you? You're saying it's a bit of a free hit.
But what I'm saying is, I wouldn't want the new manager to come in and have 2 days training or 1 day's training to be thrown at Chelsea when he's probably got a kind of start next week. That's my theory.
Yeah, I don't see it myself, but fair enough. I'd rather someone doing that than, no disrespect to the two guys that are going to be caretaking it. I'd get someone in as soon as possible. If it's the right man, yes, you have to.
They're going to have to deal with the pressure of it because it's Forest at home after that.
Exactly. Forest is a bigger game than Chelsea.
Yeah, I agree.
And whatever they've done, but with Lopetegui, I mean, he nearly took the job last time, as we mentioned, and I think it was because it even started following Wolves on Twitter, but I think they didn't dot the I's and cross the T's soon enough on the takeover deal, and by then it all agreed. And then Spain come, and then you're thinking, well, this takeover might not even happen, and now I've got the Spain job here, so it was a no-brainer. But we said at the start, someone like him, if he comes into the club, he has got a presence. You can't say who are you, what's your CV? Like the last manager or last head coach, they all know him, and he'll know them. And I think it's probably the right time in his career now because he's experienced, and a lot of the others. I mean, like Ruben Amorim. I mean, people talking about him as a really, really excellent coach who's going to go on to great things. This guy's been around the block. He knows. Doesn't know the Premier. Well, we say doesn't know the Premier League. He's not managed in the Premier League, but he'll know the players in the Premier League, and he's been around the block. He's won things, and I just think he'd have that gravitas that we probably need right now, just to come in on a 2-year deal, 3-year deal, and just to stabilise the club a little bit, and hopefully, after stabilising it, move it up, because there are still 30 games to go this season. We win on against all the odds. Go and win on Saturday. Will that be Graham Potter's first home game? Will it on Saturday?
Yeah, because
pressure on him and all. They're then for that.
Massive job for him. Massive job. No, the one thing I would say about Lopetegui that may not tick some boxes with some people that may concern them. His philosophy is very much controlling games. It's not free-flowing and exciting. It's not getting forward. But if you've got someone that's doing that more professionally, with more experience that knows how to do that job with the bigger sides and win a trophy.
And we've got technical players who can do
There's
it
very
as well.
technical players, very technical players. We need to find a system. And I agree. I think that was Wolves' greatest transfer window. I just don't think that the manager's got anywhere near a tune out of the talent we've got. I know we've argued about Neto and Knocker and Tara. I don't think he's as good as he probably said he is. I think the guy's played out of position half the season. I wanted him on the right because I was dreaming back to that goal against Southampton when he cut inside. We've seen nothing like that. A little bit of Leeds at the first game.
He's ever recovered from when he came back into the team. Still, I was hoping he'd have a good pre-season and we'd see the real Pedro Neto. He's half the player he was before he got injured at the moment.
What I would say though to that, Daz, I think that's partially playing him out of position because at the times he's been direct, standing up the fullback and getting the crossing, it's getting blocked out for a corner. That's the Pedro Neto we know. Step over, go, byline, bang it over, or have a shot yourself. That's the best out of him. And playing left, playing right, we've not had enough. The inverted thing, we're trying to accommodate Guedes into the side because he's a right-footed that prefers to be inverted. We've seen Pedro Neto suffer as a result. So hopefully it's not too serious. Hopefully when he's back, I don't know when that'll be, he'll be on his natural side. But for me, I mean, it's completely an educated guess. From what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, my money now would be on Lopetegui. I'm only just going. John Percy's very reliable. The odds are fluctuating now. I think Lopetegui's joint favourite again. But for me, that will be a massive catch for Wolves, as Knocker said, as we all agree. Big personality, experienced manager, dealt with big personalities, an elite manager to go with elite names, and hopefully that flexes forwards. Yeah, absolutely. I've had so many comments. I can't read them all out. I'm trying to filter and go on the show as well. But I have saved a couple of questions that I want to get on. We've done 46 minutes. Thank you for watching episode 41 of the Wolves Report so far with me, Ryan Lester, Daz Hale, Mark Knock and Chris Tyler. This is an interesting question. I don't know how freely or much knowledge we can take it, but it's an interesting question. And it'll probably lead us into something we've seen on social media this week as well. Jake Walker says, now Lage has left and people can talk freely. What exactly happened with Coady and what is going on with Jimenez? Now, I don't have any knowledge on what happened with either, but it's a great question. I do believe that there was obviously we know about the bust up last year. The relationship was damaged then, but Jimenez isn't the same player. Was there a fallout between him and Lage? Yes. Now, the Coady one for me, that's the interesting bit. Now, what are people's opinions on the Coady situation? First of all, I'm going to put my 10 pence in. I still believe that it was the right thing to do to let Coady go. Now, it may not have felt like that on Saturday, but if Conor Coady didn't want to stay and fight for his place, he's not a better centre-back than Collins or Kilman. I don't see that. Would he have played on Saturday? Yes, he probably would if he was here. Would he have gone to the World Cup if he was a sub for Wolves? He might not have. So at the time, it's the right thing. However, I think the club let the manager down then by not bringing a centre-back in he trusted, as opposed to having Gomez and Mosquera. So there's a bit of blame each way. I don't blame. I do think the Coady situation was the right one, but I also don't think this has been enough credit. I think the club have done Coady a solid by letting him go on loan, letting Everton pay when they can at the end of the season. It's a basic thank you to Coady. Go and get your World Cup place as well. And I think that's a bit nice. Would you agree, Daz?
We had this discussion before. The same thing happened with Traore. If they wanted to buy Conor Coady, Everton, buy him. Simple as. If not, he stays here. And, you know, when he signed his contract, doesn't guarantee your first team football week in, week out. I wonder, or were the club hedging their bets in allowing him to go on loan with one eye on the managerial situation here? Because I know he's got his kids dressed in their Everton kits now and saying all the stuff he says, but it's not an obligation to buy. I mean, I don't know the terms of the deal, whether there's even a recall.
I read somewhere it was 30 appearances. I don't know if that's true, but that's where I read somewhere. I don't know if that's factual.
Can they recall him in January? Because again, the new head coach, whoever it is, may think, oh, I'll have a bit of him around the place.
Well, so, especially if it's Amorim that comes in and Wolves do pay that 20 million knocker, then they're going to need someone that's going to sit in the middle of a back three, and who better? That's why I don't think Wolves will pay the 20 million.
Sorry, Todd, let's not forget as well, this run that we're on started when he was in the team last season. It's not
a lot of people forget that.
Since Conor Coady left the club, we were in this rut then.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you've only got to look at the Pookie performance at the end of last season when Pookie looked like Maradona against Coady and Bolly and absolutely ruined our defence that day. I think it was Bolly. It might have been I can't remember. But
it was Bolly, yeah.
But as you said, though, these problems started before and lots of goals were conceded last season. So, yeah, interesting one. Probably haven't answered your question fully there, Jake, but I do appreciate your time putting the question up. Here we go. This is a good question. Tyler, you can have this one, pal. What do you think Mendes' role is right now? I know we have very little information, but he represents the majority of the squad. He did Bruno and probably his successor, plus advising Jeff. Chris Tyler, the floor is yours.
I think Stephen's probably answered his own question, hasn't he? He's probably in Jeff's ear. He's probably putting names forward that are his clients to try and get them a job at Wolves. I believe Lopetegui's one of them. I think Stephen's answered it. I think he'll be advising still now. I think he'll be putting names forward and trying to do a deal that works for him and works for Wolves. We've all talked about the Mendes, merry-go-round, isn't it? We've hugely benefited from it, but sometimes it's bit us on the arse as well, hasn't it? So he doesn't. They say he doesn't have a say, in senior footballing decisions and appointments, but I'm not too sure, to be honest. And I think he's a bit more than just an agent and just a middleman.
Of course, outside of footballers and managers, he's probably one of the most powerful men in world football. Now, we wouldn't have been on this journey without the Fosun model. Let's partner with an agent and do that. And I'm very grateful for that because we've seen an angle. Or as much as the Leeds owners try to throw us under the bus and the Villa owners tried to throw us under the bus in that first season, it didn't work. And we have massively benefited from our model. It's unique. And other clubs have relationship with other agents. There's no question about that. It happens. It's like any business model as well. You buy from people, don't you? But if you've got someone that can give you a unique product and unique products that you would never have access to before, our first bite of the cherry, Helder Costa, Ivan Cavallero, brilliant championship players, all right Premier League players, the start of things to come. So I'm very grateful with it. Is he a massive influence at Wolves? I would say he's as equally influential as Scott Sellers is in terms of the transfers, if not more. Does he work for Wolves? No. Is it in his benefit to work with Wolves? Absolutely. I hope that clears that up.
Well, and if Lopetegui is his client, I think it's been common knowledge Seville have been trying to get rid of him potentially for a few weeks now. So he's the man to do the deal, isn't he? So who's to say he won't do it and he won't be the next Wolves manager?
Nocky, this next question's for you. Pat, if the primary target to replace Bruno isn't available, do we recruit a short-term option? Also considering that Premier League survival is essential. Great question from Pat, home and away Wolves fan. Good evening, Pat. Thanks for your question. Nocky, great question for you.
I don't think so. I think if they don't get the primary, they'll move on to the secondary. I think they'll want some stability at the club. If you're looking at a short-term option, what are you thinking? Like a João Moutinho?
Well, he did mention that in the text, but I couldn't fit it on the message. So
that's far too much of a risk for me if you put someone like that in charge of the club. It has to be an established manager. So if we don't get Lopetegui, if we don't get the next one, we keep moving down the list until we get an established manager in. For me, I think there's too much at stake otherwise.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Agreed, yeah.
I think unless there was an absolute worldie that would stay to the end of the season, but even then, like you say, it doesn't shout the message of stability. It doesn't shout the message of a project and belief and long term. And this is what our aims and goals are. So, like you said, Knocker, I think I'm with you. I think if we can't get number one, we get number two. If we can't get number two, we get number three. But let's not forget, we're not Championship 15th Wolves anymore. We're an established Premier League side with elite players. And I know Tyler doesn't probably believe that, but I believe there are quite a few elite players at Wolves, and Lopetegui would be an elite manager to complement them. Thanks for your question, Pat.
Portugal's midfield, haven't we?
Yeah, well, Portugal. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good, isn't it? Daz, this is a great question. This one is for you. This is from a regular contributor. He's been hammering the comments in, but I couldn't keep up with him. Hungry like the wolf, hammering us every week, all week. Thanks for your contribution. When the real problem at the club is the people building the squad and failing to provide a proven Premier League ready striking options, will it really make a difference who the head coach is? Now, I get his point here because it's a really good point. When did we learn our lesson going all the way back from Jimenez and going from then? Daz Hale.
Yeah, it's a great point. And then in the summer, it was when they let Fabio Silva go out on loan. I think he's done terrific, hasn't he, Anderlecht? I had no issue with him going out on loan just to do exactly what he's doing now and then hopefully come back. But we all assumed the minute he'd gone out the door that there'd be another one coming in, and that didn't happen, did it? So it could be things work out for the best sometimes, and getting Costa in could end up being a real stroke of luck. But I personally think that it's not a red herring, but not having a centre forward, a fit centre forward, certainly in recent weeks, it would have made bugger all difference if we'd got someone in there, because we haven't been creating any chances. It's not like they've been putting loads of balls in the box and you keep going, oh, if only there was someone on the end of it. It's been nothing. And it's just like, so whether it's chicken and egg, whether they haven't been doing that because there isn't anyone in there.
I certainly think there'd be.
But I just think there's.
Yeah, I mean, me and Tyler debate about this all the time. I certainly think having a centre forward, it gives you someone to play off. So therefore, you will get different chances. Yeah. Whether there's a Podence off him, whether Nunes is supporting and playing off him, I think it makes a difference. But I don't think I can forgive them creating. No, you don't need a centre forward to play a 1-2 to get behind the fullback and to square it across the edge of the box. Those chances haven't been happening. So with the players that we have and the wing backs, fullbacks that we have, you should be geting higher up the pitch and getting balls across the face, and you don't need a striker to do that. Yeah. So
but again, if you go back to the first 3 games of last season, we were having a right good go at teams, didn't score a goal, but the whole everybody's mindset was completely different, because you could see that it was that close to turning. And if it was like that now, if we'd got beat 3-2 at West Ham on Saturday and had a right good go, or got beat 2-0, but peppered their goal and hit the post 3 times, but we have just not been creating anything. So yes, we need a centre forward or 2, probably 3, but I don't think that is the reason why we're where we are now. And I think it's deeper rooted than that. And all the noise is coming out is because there's just been this real breakdown in trust, in respect, in communication with Bruno Lage, who I have to say has always been great to deal with from our point of view. But it don't really. But it's what's going on behind the scenes, and it's too much coming out now.
And I think more's going to come out, Daz. More's going to come out as well. Absolutely. Hungary, thank you for your contributions as always, a regular follower of the Wolves Report. I can't put everything you put on there tonight, but I'll have a look through afterwards. I've not been able to keep up. But the comments and the questions are a part of the live show while we do it live, so we can have the interactions. Moving on to the final part of the show, then we need to look at this easy game we've got that Chris thinks away at Chelsea on Saturday. We've got Steve Davis, James Collins. I was talking to my dad about this earlier on. Stop stropping, Tyler. Are you watching the Forest game?
No, furious. I've turned it off.
So, if you're Steve Davis, not the snooker player, and James Collins, not the centre back,
we'll have the snooker player.
If you're these guys here, are you going to spoil at Chelsea, or are you going, I've got one chance here, let's have a go at it? What are you doing? What if it's big knock? What if it's big knock and little knock in charge for Chelsea? What are you doing?
I know what I'd do. I'd go 4-2-3-1 and just throw caution to the wind, but he ain't going to do that. I don't think he'll change a lot, if I'm being honest. Collins obviously isn't available. Neves won't be available. I think he'll stick with the 3 at the back. I think Totti or Mosquera comes in to play in that position. Other than that, I don't think he's going to do a lot different. I think they'll know it's just for one game, and they'll look for try and make it horrible, see if we can defend better than we did against West Ham and just keep it respectable is my suspicion.
Tyler?
I agree. I'd go 4-2-2. I think the team almost picks itself, doesn't it? I think Coutinho's done. I don't think he's got 90 minutes in him. So I'd play Nunes and Traore as the 2. I'd play Costa, I'd play Adama, I'd play Podence, and I'd play Guedes.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's
You've been telling me it's a free hit. Well, make it a free hit.
Yeah, I like that.
To lose.
And Potter will do. Potter will remember what he did with Brighton, and he'll get, like when Crystal Palace played against us as well, he'll be pressing, he'll be in our faces. So I think we need physicality, we need athleticism, and we need to do to them what they want to do to us and actually go out on the front foot. And if we get beat 5-0 on Saturday,
doesn't matter.
But I just think we know what they're going to do to us, because he will use the same blueprints, or he'll try to use the same blueprints he used at Brighton. Some of these Chelsea players might not want to do that. Again, it's about having the gravitas and the presence. They might be looking at him and going, well, who are you? which is going to be one of his real challenges.
Absolutely.
So
what's
learn
fascinating?
from what happened last time we played one of his teams.
What's fascinating for me is the Moutinho situation. Now, if it's 4-3-3 as it has been all season, naturally for me, Moutinho moves to the pivot. He sits. He has Traoré one side and Núñez the other. Surely that's, if you're playing a 3 against a very good Chelsea, well, not very good, a good Chelsea side, then that makes sense to put the 3 in the middle. I'm totally with you guys, Knocker, Tyler. If it is a 2, I want all the legs in there, and that's got to be Núñez and Traoré, and that's a completely different midfield from what we've seen in the past. I think Adama Traoré has to be the first name on the sheet. It doesn't matter what the fullback is; they hate playing against him. He's someone that can get at any team in the world, any defender in the world. End product's not always there. Can you be relied on all the time? Not always. But there's a guy that never hides away. He will always take. Yeah, he'll always take a player on. He'll always try and get a cross in. He doesn't stop. He doesn't hide. For me, he has to play. That's our out ball. I don't think it looks good for Neto, to be honest. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to say what I think it is. Podence in the 10 off Costa. See if we can get an hour out of Costa, and then you have Guedes on his natural side where he prefers to cut in. 4-2-3-1. Centre back. I'm thinking I'm going to bring Totti in, move Kilman over. Let Totti play on his natural side. Kilman looks like he can play left or right. I'd start Semedo again. I think he's got great legs. He didn't do too bad at West Ham. And I think with Aït-Nouri, he's our future at left back getting forward. Let's have a go. Let's find out. When you're defending, that team's 4-5-1. Costa, stay in the centre circle, hold it up, be spiteful, be angry, antagonise. When the Chelsea fans are clapping, you go and score. Let's see how it works out then. But it is a free hit, and I hope Collins and Davis take the opportunity. I don't know if they will, but I feel like we've got something to look forward to again now. Am I expecting anything? No, but I feel like the weight's off our shoulders. It's the next step in a fresh start. So before we end the show, start with you, Tyler. I would like your first scorer and prediction for Chelsea.
3-0, Aubameyang.
He's going to score.
You've just been telling us it was an easy game, so what was a You pinched me score and all.
Is that Aubameyang scoring an own goal then, mate? That's outrageous. But Knocker.
3-0 Sterling.
Crikey. And complete the Christmas spirit, it's Daz Hale with his prediction for Chelsea v Wolves.
1-1. Kilman, get on it.
Well, I'll have a little bit of that. Because I'm hosting the show, I feel bad if I can't predict a win. I don't believe for a second anything's going to happen positive, but I'm going to go with a 2-2 epic and a comeback like last year. We've done it once, we can do it again.
We haven't scored 2 all season.
What do you want me to do? Say we'll lose 3-0 and have a miserable end to the show. This has been episode 41 of the Wolves Report. Thank you to Mark Knott, Chris Tyler, and BBC WM's Daz Hale for joining us.
You said you weren't a doctor, so what was that all about before?
This is what I have to put up with. These pundits on here. I'm trying to close the show, and they're absolutely hammering it. This has been episode 41 of the Wolves Report. You can watch on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. We'll join us next week after Wolves have won at Chelsea. What? Up the Wolves.